It was a typical afternoon at the local neighborhood park. Until an encounter changed everything. An elderly white lady confronted a young black teenager at the benches, questioning his right to be there. The exchange quickly escalated, drawing the attention of onlookers. The scene unfolded like something out of a courtroom drama. But then, the atmosphere shifted. A sleek silver limo arrived, its presence commanding immediate attention. When the door opened, the identity of the individual who stepped out sent shock waves through the crowd, leaving everyone speechless. What happened next would not only redefine that day, but also challenge perceptions in a way no one could have anticipated. Stay tuned to witness how this encounter takes a powerful turn you won't want to miss. Like this video, share it with others, and don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell for more impactful stories. The park was alive with the sound of laughter and the chatter of families enjoying a warm Saturday afternoon. Birds chirped from the treetops, their melodies harmonizing with the rhythmic creak of swings and the occasional bark of dogs. Children dashed across the open field, their squeals of delight mixing with the hum of life. The scent of fresh grass lingered in the warm air, mingling with the enticing aroma of grilled burgers from a nearby picnic area. Jamal Robinson sat on a bench near the basketball court, his well-worn sneakers resting on the edge of his skateboard. At 16, Jamal had grown accustomed to the rhythm of this park. It was his refuge, a place to escape the pressures of school and the unrelenting scrutiny of being the governor's son. He glanced at his phone, checking the time. His mother, Governor Alicia Robinson, was wrapping up a meeting at a nearby community center and had promised to swing by in an hour. He tapped out a quick text to his best friend, asking if he'd be down for a game later. The screen's faint glow caught his attention just long enough for him to notice the shadow that suddenly fell across his bench. "Excuse me," came a sharp voice, slicing through the calm. Jamal looked up to see a middle-aged white woman in a pastel tracksuit, her arms crossed and her face pinched into an expression of disapproval. Her golden retriever sat obediently at her feet, wagging its tail as if unaware of its owner's rising tension. A pair of sunglasses perched on her head did little to soften her piercing gaze. "Yeah," Jamal said, wary. He'd been here before. Different faces, same tone. "You shouldn't be here," she said, glancing down at the skateboard as if it were a weapon. "This is a family park. We don't allow loitering." Jamal blinked. "Loitering? I'm just sitting here." The woman's lips pursed tightly. "You know what I mean. We've had incidents before. Kids causing trouble. I think it'd be better if you left." Jamal's stomach tightened, a familiar wave of frustration bubbling up. He didn't need to ask what she meant by kids or trouble. He set his phone down deliberately and looked her in the eye, his voice steady. "I've been coming to this park for years," he said evenly. "I'm not bothering anyone." The woman's eyes narrowed, her expression hardening further. She reached for her phone. "If you won't leave, I'll have to call someone." Jamal raised his hands in mock surrender. "Go ahead. I'm not doing anything wrong." Her fingers flew across the screen, the sharp click of nails on glass punctuating the charged silence. Jamal shook his head, muttering under his breath. He knew he shouldn't engage, but anger bubbled in his chest. He'd done nothing to deserve this scrutiny, this implicit accusation. The tension crackled in the air like a live wire. A moment later, a crowd began to form, drawn by the escalating scene. Parents glanced over from their picnic blankets, whispering to one another. A jogger slowed, earbuds dangling, curiosity piqued by the rising tension. The growing audience made the air feel heavier, pressing down on Jamal. "What's going on here?" asked a voice from the gathering group. It was a man in a baseball cap, his young daughter clutching his hand, her wide eyes darting between Jamal and the woman. "This young man refuses to leave," the woman said, her voice loud enough to carry over the murmurs. "We can't have people like him intimidating families." "Intimidating?" Jamal said, incredulous. "I'm sitting on a bench." The man hesitated, eyeing Jamal, his expression caught between skepticism and unease. He said nothing, though, letting the woman's accusations linger. The murmurs around them grew louder, a dissonant chorus of doubt and suspicion. Then a new voice broke through the noise. Jamal. Heads turned as a tall, elegant black woman in a tailored blazer strode across the grass, her heels clicking against the pavement with purposeful rhythm. Alicia Robinson exuded authority, her expression a mix of concern and determination. Behind her, a pair of aides trailed, their faces taut with worry, their presence a testament to her ever-demanding role. "Mom," Jamal said, relief flooding his voice. It was as if her arrival punctured the growing tension, if only for a moment. Alicia's eyes swept the scene, taking in the tense standoff with practiced precision. She addressed the woman directly, her tone calm but firm, a quiet storm brewing beneath her words. "Is there a problem here?" The woman faltered, her confidence wavering under Alicia's steady gaze. This young man was being disruptive. "I was just—" "Disruptive?" Alicia's voice cut through the excuse like a blade. "My son is sitting on a bench in a public park. What exactly is the issue?" The woman's face turned crimson, a blotchy hue that crept from her neck to her cheeks. "I didn't realize." "Didn't realize what?" Alicia asked, stepping closer, her presence towering. "That he has every right to be here? Or that I would show up?" The crowd watched in stunned silence as the governor addressed the situation head-on. Alicia's gaze swept the gathering, her voice rising with the conviction that had earned her respect across the state, her words deliberate and cutting through the air like a clarion call. "This is exactly the kind of behavior we need to confront," she said. "Assumptions made about my son because of the color of his skin. This park belongs to everyone, and no one should feel unwelcome." The woman opened her mouth as if to protest, but no words came out. Alicia turned to Jamal, her expression softening, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice quieter now, layered with concern. Jamal nodded, though his jaw was tight. "I'm fine." The governor gave him a small, reassuring squeeze before addressing the crowd again. "Let this be a reminder. Prejudice has no place here. If we want a better future, it starts with each of us." As her words hung in the air, the tension began to dissipate. People murmured their agreement, some shuffling away, embarrassed. Alicia guided Jamal toward her aides, her presence commanding but protective. Before they departed, Jamal cast one last glance at the woman, who stood frozen in place, her phone still clutched in her hand, her earlier bravado now a brittle facade. The incident was far from over. By the time they reached the car, Jamal's phone buzzed with notifications. A video of the confrontation had already hit social media, spreading like wildfire. The world was watching. By the next morning, the video had amassed over 2 million views. Every platform was ablaze with comments, hashtags, and heated debates. Jamal sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone while the television in the background played a news segment about the incident. "Governor Alicia Robinson confronts park bias," the headline read, the screen split between a freeze frame of Alicia mid-speech and the woman /U 2019's blurred, panicked face. Jamal /U 2019's face was visible in the video, too, staring resolutely at the woman /U 2019's phone with an expression that screamed both defiance and exhaustion. The sound of sizzling bacon filled the kitchen, adding a faint sense of normalcy that sharply contrasted with the chaos online. Alicia Robinson moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, her phone buzzing intermittently on the counter. Despite the early hour, she was already dressed in a crisp navy blouse and tailored slacks. "Jamal," she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of the last 12 hours. "Have you eaten?" Jamal shook his head, his eyes fixed on his phone. He scrolled past a tweet that read, "This is what systemic racism looks like," calling the cops on a kid for sitting in a park. It had over 50,000 retweets. Another caught his eye. Is this really the governor's son? What does this say about her ability to lead impartially? The comments below were a toxic mix of support and vitriol. "I'm not hungry," Jamal muttered, setting his phone face down on the counter. Alicia sighed, placing a plate of eggs and toast in front of him anyway. "You need to eat. It's going to be a long day." Jamal pushed the food around his plate with his fork. "Why did this have to happen, Mom? I wasn't even doing anything." Alicia leaned against the counter, her arms crossed. She looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw the weight he was carrying. The exhaustion in his eyes mirrored her own. "You're right," she said softly. "You weren't doing anything wrong. And that's what makes this so hard. It's not fair that you have to deal with this. But this is why we fight. For you, for kids like you who deserve better." Jamal didn't respond. He stared at his plate, his appetite as absent as his optimism. The television continued in the background, switching to a panel discussion. A commentator gestured emphatically as he spoke. "This incident highlights a larger issue of racial profiling in our society. But the fact that it involves the governor's son raises questions about whether her office can address these biases effectively." Alicia grabbed the remote and muted the TV, her jaw tightening. "I can't watch this right now." "Do you think it'll ever stop?" Jamal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alicia placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm but comforting. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I know we can't stop pushing for change. If we give up, nothing will get better." The sound of her phone buzzing broke the moment. She glanced at the screen and sighed. "I have a press conference in an hour. They want me to address the video." "Great," Jamal said flatly. "Another reason for everyone to talk about me." "It's not about you, Jamal. It's about what this represents. And I'm going to make sure people understand that." Jamal stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the tile floor. "I don't want to be a symbol, Mom. I just want to be a kid." Alicia watched as he grabbed his skateboard and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "To clear my head," he said without turning around. The door closed behind him, leaving Alicia standing in the quiet kitchen. She took a deep breath and picked up her phone, preparing herself for the day ahead. Outside, Jamal skated down the sidewalk, his mind racing as fast as the wheels beneath him. The park incident replayed in his head, each detail sharper and more frustrating with every pass. He couldn't escape it, not on his phone, not on the news, and certainly not in his own mind. He turned a corner and nearly collided with his best friend, Malik, who was waiting with his own skateboard at the corner of their usual hangout spot. "Yo," Malik said, his face breaking into a grin that quickly faded when he saw Jamal's expression. "Man, I saw the video." "You good?" "Not really," Jamal admitted. He kicked his board up into his hand and leaned against a nearby wall. "It's everywhere. People won't stop talking about it." Malik nodded. "Yeah, but most people are on your side. That lady looked crazy trying to kick you out for no reason." Jamal shook his head. "It's not just about her. It's about all of it. I feel like I can't even exist without someone thinking I'm doing something wrong." Malik didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he pulled out his phone and showed Jamal a clip of the video. "Look at the comments, though. People are standing up for you. They're talking about how messed up this is." Jamal glanced at the screen. He saw the support but couldn't bring himself to feel it. All he could focus on was the weight of being the center of a conversation he never asked for. "I don't want to be anyone's inspiration," he said quietly. "You don't have to be," Malik said. "Just be you. That's enough." Jamal sighed and looked out at the horizon. The world felt impossibly big and small at the same time, but Malik's words gave him a sliver of comfort. For now, he'd take it. Jamal and Malik hung out at their usual spot for a while, their skateboards resting against the wall as they talked about anything but the incident. Malik made an effort to steer the conversation toward lighter topics / U 2014, a new video game coming out. their plans for summer /U 2014, but Jamal /U 2019's mind kept drifting back to the park. Every time his phone buzzed in his pocket, he felt a spike of anxiety. Finally, he couldn't /U 2019 take it anymore. "I need to head back," Jamal said, standing up and grabbing his skateboard. "You sure?" "We can chill here longer if you want," Malik offered, but Jamal shook his head. "Nah, I don't feel right. Thanks for hanging out, though." Malik nodded, giving him a fist bump. "You know where to find me if you need to talk. And don't let those comments mess with your head." "You're good, bro." Jamal managed a small smile. "Thanks, man. I'll catch you later." As he skated home, his thoughts raced. He didn't know what he'd expected. Maybe that getting out would make him feel normal again, like he could leave everything behind for a while. But no matter where he went, the incident followed him, like an invisible weight pressing on his shoulders. When he walked into the house, he found his mom sitting in her office, papers and a laptop spread out in front of her. She was mid-conversation with one of her aides, her voice measured but firm. "No, I'm not going to let this narrative get twisted," Alicia was saying. "This isn't about me or my son personally. It's about the systemic issues this incident represents. We need to keep the focus there." Jamal hesitated in the doorway, not wanting to interrupt. Alicia noticed him out of the corner of her eye and held up a finger to signal she'd be done in a moment. "I have to go," she said into the phone. "Draft the statement and send it to me for review. And make sure the press knows I'll be addressing this at the conference later." She hung up and turned her attention to Jamal. "Hey, sweetheart. You okay?" Jamal shrugged. "Not really." Alicia gestured for him to come in. He sat down across from her, his skateboard resting against the desk. "It's a lot," Alicia said gently. "I know that. But you don't have to carry this by yourself." Jamal sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I just don't get why it had to happen. I wasn't doing anything wrong. And now it's like the whole world knows about it." Alicia leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "Jamal, what happened to you was wrong. There's no excuse for it. But sometimes, when things like this happen, they force people to see the truth, to confront things they'd rather ignore." "But why does it have to be me?" Jamal asked, his voice cracking slightly. "I didn't ask for this." "I know," Alicia said, her tone full of empathy. "And if I could take that burden off you, I would. But we're here now, and we have a chance to make a difference. I don't want what happened to you to happen to anyone else. Ever." Jamal was quiet for a moment, processing her words. "Do you think it'll actually change anything? Or will people just move on in a week?" Alicia hesitated. "Change is slow. It takes time and effort, and sometimes it feels like nothing's happening. But every step forward matters, even if it's small." Jamal nodded, though he still wasn't sure he believed it. He stood up, his skateboard in hand. "I'm gonna go to my room for a bit." Alicia watched him go, her heart heavy. She wanted to protect him from all of this, but she knew she couldn't. All she could do was stand by him and fight for a better world. Later that afternoon, Alicia stood behind a podium at the state capitol, cameras flashing as reporters crowded around. The press conference had drawn significant attention, with news outlets from across the country covering the story. Alicia took a deep breath, her hands gripping the sides of the podium as she prepared to speak. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady and authoritative. "As many of you know, an incident occurred yesterday at a local park involving my son, Jamal Robinson. A video of this incident has sparked widespread discussion, and I want to address it directly." She paused, letting the room settle into silence. "What happened to my son is not an isolated incident. It is part of a larger pattern of racial profiling and bias that affects countless individuals in this country every day. My son did nothing wrong. He was sitting on a bench in a public park, a place where everyone has the right to be. Alicia's voice grew stronger as she continued. This is not just about my family. This is about the systemic issues that allow these kinds of assumptions to persist. It's about the need for change, not just in policies, but in attitudes and perceptions. The reporters scribbled furiously, their cameras capturing every word. Alicia knew this moment would define the narrative, and she was determined to use it for good. I am committed to using this experience to push for meaningful progress, she said. We will not let this moment pass without taking action. My office will be launching an initiative to address racial bias in public spaces, and I will be working with community leaders to ensure that every voice is heard. As she spoke, Jamal watched from home, the television broadcasting his mother's speech. For the first time since the incident, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all of this. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alicia and Jamal sat on the back porch, a quiet moment between mother and son. The air was cool, and the sky was streaked with shades of orange and pink. I saw your speech, Jamal said, breaking the silence. You were good. Thanks, Alicia said, smiling softly. I meant every word. Jamal nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Do you really think it'll make a difference? I do, Alicia said firmly. But it's not just up to me. Change takes all of us, working together, refusing to accept the way things are. Jamal was quiet for a moment, then said, I think I want to do something, too. Not just sit around and let people talk about me. I want to help. Alicia's heart swelled with pride. You already are, she said. Just by being who you are. For the first time in days, Jamal felt a sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to walk it. Together, they would keep moving forward, one step at a time. The following week was a whirlwind of activity. The governor's office was inundated with calls and emails, some supportive, others critical. Alicia and her team worked tirelessly, drafting new proposals for community engagement and anti-bias training in public spaces. Meanwhile, Jamal found himself grappling with his unexpected role as a symbol in a conversation he had never asked to be part of. The viral video continued to dominate social media, with new angles emerging as bystanders shared their perspectives. One particularly poignant clip showed Jamal calmly standing his ground as the woman, now identified as Karen Whitmore, berated him. The video had become emblematic of the racial biases so deeply ingrained in society. But Jamal didn't want to be a passive participant in the story. Sitting on his bed one evening, he stared at his laptop, scrolling through countless messages. Many were supportive, people sharing their own experiences or thanking him for his courage. Others were angry, accusing him of being part of a publicity stunt. He closed the laptop with a sigh and picked up his phone. He sent a quick text to Malik. You up for brainstorming tomorrow? Got an idea. The reply came back instantly. Always. What's up? I want to do something. Start something. I'll explain tomorrow. The next day, Jamal and Malik sat in a corner booth at a local diner, a notebook between them and the remnants of their lunch pushed to the side. So, what's the plan? Malik asked, leaning forward with interest. Jamal tapped his pen against the table. I've been thinking a lot about what happened and how many people are talking about it. But it's not just about me. It's about all the people who've gone through the same thing and didn't have a platform to speak up. Malik nodded. Right. So what do we do? I want to start a group, Jamal said. Like a youth-led organization. We can use social media to share stories, bring attention to stuff like this, and push for real change. Malik's eyes lit up. That's dope. We could have events, maybe even partner with local organizations. Exactly, Jamal said, scribbling notes as he talked. We could call it something like Voices Rising. Something that shows we're not just sitting back, we're making noise. Voices Rising, Malik repeated, nodding approvingly. I like it. And you already have a following because of the video. People will listen. Jamal hesitated. Yeah, but I don't want this to be about me. It's not about being famous or anything. It's about making a difference. Malik grinned. That's why it's gonna work. People can tell when someone's real. Within days, Voices Rising was officially launched on social media. Jamal and Malik worked tirelessly to create posts, share resources, and encourage others to share their stories. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from across the country, each one a testament to the pervasive nature of bias and the resilience of those who faced it. Alicia watched her son's efforts with pride. While she was busy in meetings and policy discussions, Jamal was building something powerful, something that came directly from his heart. "You're doing something incredible," she told him one evening as they sat in the living room. "I'm just trying to do what you always do," Jamal replied. Alicia smiled. "You're forging your own path. And that's exactly what the world needs." A few weeks later, the governor's office announced a town hall event to address the park incident and the broader issues it represented. Alicia invited community leaders, activists, and residents to participate in an open dialogue. To Jamal's surprise, his mother also asked him to speak. "I think people need to hear from you," she said. "You've shown so much strength through all of this. Your voice matters." Jamal felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach, but he agreed. He knew this was bigger than him, and he wanted to do his part. The town hall was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. Cameras lined the back of the room, and rows of chairs were filled with a diverse group of attendees. Alicia opened the event with a speech that highlighted the importance of community and accountability. Her words met with applause. When it was Jamal's turn to speak, he stood at the podium, his heart pounding. He took a deep breath and looked out at the audience. "Hi, everyone," he began, his voice steady despite the nerves. "My name is Jamal Robinson. A few weeks ago, I was just a kid sitting in a park, trying to mind my own business. What happened that day wasn't new. It's something a lot of people experience all the time. But what made it different was that people saw it. They paid attention." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I didn't ask to be in the spotlight, but now that I am, I want to use it for something good. That's why we started Voices Rising, to make sure stories like mine aren't ignored. To make sure people know they're not alone." The room was silent, everyone hanging on his words. Jamal felt a surge of confidence as he continued. "Change isn't easy. It's not quick. But it starts with us, speaking up, listening to each other, and refusing to let things stay the same." When he finished, the audience erupted in applause. Alicia beamed from her seat, tears glistening in her eyes. That night, as Jamal lay in bed, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in weeks. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, he felt like he was moving in the right direction. Together, he and his community were building something bigger than any one person, a movement that couldn't be silenced. And that was only the beginning. The days following the town hall were a blur of activity. Jamal's speech had resonated deeply, and Voices Rising gained even more momentum. Messages flooded their inbox, people sharing their stories, asking how they could help, or simply expressing gratitude for the work being done. The organization quickly outgrew Jamal and Malik's small operation. Local leaders and activists reached out, offering their support. A volunteer team formed almost overnight, handling logistics, outreach, and social media. Jamal was overwhelmed but inspired. What had started as an idea in a diner booth was now a movement with real potential to make a difference. The incident at the park sparked a broader conversation about bias in public spaces, and Voices Rising organized its first major event, a peaceful protest at the park where it all began. The goal was to reclaim the space, turning it into a symbol of inclusivity rather than division. The day of the protest dawned bright and clear. By noon, the park was filled with hundreds of people, families, activists, students, and local residents, all united under the banner of change. Signs bearing messages like, "This park belongs to everyone" and "End racial bias now" dotted the crowd. Jamal stood near the front, holding a megaphone. Malik was by his side, along with several members of their growing team. Alicia stood a few steps back, letting Jamal take the lead. She knew this was his moment. When Jamal stepped forward to address the crowd, the energy was electric. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice amplified by the megaphone. "This park was the scene of something ugly a few weeks ago, but today we're turning it into something beautiful. We're showing the world that no one gets to decide who belongs and who doesn't. Not here, not anywhere." The crowd cheered, their voices echoing across the park. Jamal continued, his words filled with conviction. "This isn't just about one incident or one park. It's about challenging the systems and attitudes that allow these things to keep happening. It's about standing together and refusing to accept anything less than equality and respect for everyone." When he finished, the crowd erupted into applause. The protest continued with speeches from local leaders, musical performances, and an open mic session where attendees shared their experiences. The atmosphere was one of hope and solidarity, a powerful reminder of what could be accomplished when people came together. Not everyone was on board with the movement. Karen Whitmore, the woman from the park, had remained largely silent since the incident, but as the protest gained attention, she resurfaced with her own version of events. In an exclusive interview with a local news station, she claimed to have been misunderstood and vilified. "I'm not a racist," she said, her voice shaking as she clutched a tissue. "I was just trying to protect the families in the park. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know he was the governor's son." The interview sparked a firestorm of debate. Some viewers sympathized with Karen, while others saw it as an attempt to deflect responsibility. Jamal watched the segment with a mixture of disbelief and frustration. "She doesn't get it," he said to Alicia later that evening. "It's not about whether she knew who I was. It's about the fact that she thought I didn't belong there at all." "You're right," Alicia said, her tone calm but firm. "And that's why we keep doing the work. The louder we are, the harder it'll be for people to ignore the truth." As the movement gained traction, Jamal and Alicia were approached by a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell their story. The filmmaker, a young black woman named Serena Ellis, had followed Voices Rising from the beginning and believed their journey could inspire a larger audience. "I want to show not just what happened to you," Serena explained during their first meeting, "but how you turned it into something powerful. This isn't just about one family. It's about a community rising up." Jamal was hesitant at first. The idea of having cameras follow him around felt intrusive, but after talking it over with Alicia and Malik, he agreed. "If it helps get the message out, then it's worth it," he said. Filming began shortly after. Serena and her crew captured everything: the protests, the meetings, and even quieter moments at home. Jamal quickly realized that the documentary wasn't just about him. It was about everyone involved in Voices Rising and the larger movement for justice. While Jamal was focused on the grassroots side of the movement, Alicia was making waves in the political arena. After weeks of intense lobbying, she succeeded in passing a landmark bill aimed at combating racial bias in public spaces. The legislation included mandatory anti-bias training for public employees, increased funding for community programs, and stronger protections against discrimination. The bill's passage was celebrated as a major victory, but Alicia knew it was just one step in a much larger fight. "Laws can change behavior," she said in an interview, "but only education and empathy can change hearts." One evening, after a long day of meetings and interviews, Jamal sat on the porch with Alicia, much like they had the night of the town hall. The air was warm, and the cicadas buzzed in the distance. "Do you ever think about how all of this started?" Jamal asked, his voice quiet. "All the time," Alicia replied. "It started with someone trying to tear you down. But look at what you've built instead." Jamal nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "I guess I've learned something from you after all." Alicia laughed softly. You've always had it in you, Jamal. I just gave you a little nudge. As they sat together, the weight of the past weeks felt a little lighter. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Jamal felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, they had turned a moment of injustice into a movement for change, and that, he realized, was just the beginning. The momentum of Voices Rising and Alicia's legislative victory catapulted their story onto the national stage. News outlets and talk shows reached out for interviews, eager to spotlight the movement and its impact. What began as a local incident had grown into a symbol of the fight against systemic bias across the country. Jamal found himself invited to speak at conferences and schools, often sharing the stage with prominent activists and public figures. While he appreciated the platform, the attention was overwhelming at times. He was still just a teenager, balancing school, friendships, and his newfound role as a leader. During one particularly busy week, Alicia noticed her son's exhaustion. After a late-night meeting about an upcoming panel discussion, she pulled him aside. "Jamal, you've been doing incredible work," she said, her voice filled with pride. "But you need to take care of yourself, too." Jamal rubbed his eyes and sighed. "I know, but I feel like if I stop, people will think I don't care." "Resting doesn't mean you don't care," Alicia said. "It means you're making sure you're strong enough to keep going. This is a marathon, not a sprint." Reluctantly, Jamal agreed to take a few days off from public appearances. During his break, he spent time with Malik and his other friends, skateboarding and hanging out like they used to before everything changed. The break was exactly what he needed to recharge and refocus. A few months later, Jamal and Alicia were invited to an awards gala honoring individuals and organizations making significant contributions to social justice. Voices Rising was being recognized for its grassroots efforts, and Jamal was set to receive a Youth Leadership Award. The event was held in a grand ballroom, with chandeliers casting warm light over elegantly dressed attendees. Jamal tugged nervously at his tie as Alicia adjusted the lapels of his suit. "You look great," she said with a smile. "I feel like I'm going to trip walking up to the stage," Jamal muttered. Alicia laughed softly. "If you do, just get up and keep going. That's what this whole journey has been about, right?" When Jamal's name was called, the room erupted into applause. He walked to the stage, his heart pounding, and accepted the award with a shy smile. In his speech, he thanked his mother, Malik, and the countless people who had supported Voices Rising. "This award isn't just for me," he said. "It's for everyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong. It's for everyone who stood up and said, 'This isn't right.' Together, we're making a difference." The audience gave him a standing ovation, and Alicia couldn't have been prouder. Months after the awards gala, an unexpected email landed in Jamal's inbox. It was from Karen Whitmore, the woman who had sparked the initial incident at the park. Jamal hesitated before opening it, unsure of what to expect. The message was brief but sincere. "Dear Jamal, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on what happened that day. I realize now that I was wrong, not just in how I treated you, but in the assumptions I made. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you and your family. I'm working to educate myself and do better. I hope you can forgive me." Jamal stared at the email for a long time, his emotions conflicted. Part of him wanted to delete it, but another part recognized the courage it took to admit fault. After thinking it over, he replied, "Dear Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for your message. I appreciate your willingness to reflect and take responsibility. Forgiveness is a process, but I hope you continue to grow and help others understand the importance of treating everyone with respect. Change starts with actions, not just words." Jamal sent the email, feeling a sense of closure he hadn't realized he needed. A year after the park incident, Voices Rising had become a nationwide organization, with chapters in multiple cities and a growing network of young activists. Jamal was often asked what he saw for the future, both for himself and the movement. "I want to keep building something that lasts," he told a reporter during an anniversary event. "Something that keeps pushing for change long after I'm gone. This isn't just about one moment. It's about creating a world where no one has to go through what I did." Alicia watched her son with pride, knowing he had grown into a remarkable leader. While she continued her work as governor, she often leaned on Jamal's insights and passion, recognizing that his perspective brought a new dimension to the fight for justice. As they stood together at the event, Jamal looked out at the crowd of supporters. He thought back to that day in the park, how small and powerless he had felt. Now, surrounded by a community of people united for change, he felt anything but powerless. This was just the beginning. Together, they would keep rising. Comment your thoughts below. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next one.